Ladies and gentlemen, the Labour Party has won the UK elections with a landslide majority against the Conservative Party. Now, Keir Starmer is set to be Britain's first Labour Prime Minister after 14 years. In his victory speech, Starmer said that his party is ready to serve the country and thanked British citizens for voting for change. Meanwhile, Rishi Sunak resigned after the historic results. Take a look at this special report. The exit polls predicted it, the election pundits said it. Yet, till the very end, Rishi Sunak kept urging British citizens to stop the Labour supermajority. His words, however, could not stop the Labour juggernaut. Ending the 14-year-long rule of the Tories, the Keir Starmer-led Labour Party won over 412 out of the 650 seats in the House of Commons, completely dismantling Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party. Announcing his resignation, the outgoing UK Prime Minister invoked his Indian roots and said that he gave his all to the job.
To the country, I would like to say first and foremost, I am sorry. I have given this job my all, but you have sent a clear signal that the government of the United Kingdom must change, and yours is the only judgment that matters. I have heard your anger, your disappointment, and I take responsibility for this loss.
The Conservatives leave behind 14 years of major political upheavals, scandals and controversies. Their rule began in 2010 when the election saw a hung parliament, with David Cameron winning most seats but not an overall majority. 2014 saw the Scottish independence referendum, which threatened to split the UK. However, Scotland voted 55% to 45% against independence, in what was a victory for Cameron. The historic and deeply dividing Brexit vote came in 2016. The Brits voted 52 to 48% to leave the European Union, ending a more than 40-year union as well as plunging the country into its biggest political crisis since World War II. Cameron was forced to resign and Theresa May succeeded him. In 2020, the Brexit deal passed through the Parliament and Britain exited the EU on the 31st of January. 2 years later, in July 2022, Boris Johnson was ousted over a long list of scandals and missteps surrounding the COVID pandemic. It was then, in May 2022, that Rishi Sunak became UK's Prime Minister after Liz Truss stepped down, ending her short 6-week stint. All eyes are now on Keir Starmer, who is set to be the new UK Prime Minister.
Now our country has voted decisively for change, for national renewal and a return of politics to public service.
A stagnant economy, a health system in shambles, and collapsing public services are Starmer's inheritances. Only time will tell if Starmerism can now hold ground in Britain. All right, to talk more about this on the broadcast, I'm joined by Nugent Former BBC Editor, and Shreya Upadhyaya, foreign policy expert. Good evening, namaskar to both of you gentlemen. Before I come to both of you, let me go across to my colleague Danish, who's been tracking these elections in the United Kingdom. Danish, good evening to you. Here, of course, it's night time, but it's been a morning of change. It's been a transformational morning there in UK. What's really the sentiment? What's happening there? Get us all the latest that's happening.
Well, yes, it's a day of transformational politics here. Huge development. Keir Starmer has already taken charge as the Prime Minister after meeting King Charles in Buckingham Palace, and he has already announced his cabinet. Angela Rayner will be the Deputy Prime Minister. Shreya, of course, David Lammy is the new Foreign Secretary. Yvette Cooper will be the Home Secretary. So these key postings have already been announced, showing that Keir Starmer means business and that, as he said, in his speech, the change begins now. The new cabinet has been ushered in. Of course, the junior ministers will follow very soon, and Keir Starmer is raring to go, and he wants to make it clear that the mandate means that he has to get down on business. Key announcements will be, of course, coming in the wings over the next few days, but it will be a difficult time for Keir Starmer because of the crisis in Middle East, the Ukraine war, and also, of course, there is elections in US as well. So a resetting of relationship between UK and different partners across the world. Also, he will be watched very keenly as to what steps he takes to work out that relationship with India. It has been some kind of a sore issues with Labour over the last few years, but Keir Starmer has been saying that he wants to mend relationship. Already his key policy makers and, of course, Indian origin Labour leaders have reached out to Indian constituents and Indian policy makers who are active in the India-UK corridor. But the cabinet ministers have already been declared. They have taken charge. Yvette Cooper visited the Home Office just a few moments ago. David Lammy, of course, has got the key charge as the Foreign Secretary. So new faces, new politics, a fresh air of politics, if I may say so. We can feel here in Britain, of course, but Keir Starmer taking charge as Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak bowing down one last time, making a very humble and statesman-like speech outside Parliament. He also highlighted the fact that his daughters got the chance to lit Diwali candles in 10 Downing Street, in some ways celebrating the multiculturalism of Britain. But of course, it's a new day in British politics. Keir Starmer and his team has now taken charge of the United Kingdom.
You know, Danish, rightly you said that Rishi Sunak did invoke his Indian roots. He talked about Diwali being celebrated at 10 Downing Street. But even as the Indian origin Rishi Sunak bows out of 10 Downing Street, there are a record number of Indian origin candidates who've won in this election as well.
Yes, absolutely, Shreya. And that now seems to be a permanent thing in British politics. This multiculturalism has taken shape in the form of large number of South Asian Indian origin MPs who are reaching the Palace of Westminster. And this election is no different. It's going to be one of the most diverse, and both the Conservatives and the Labour have sizable amount of Indian origin MPs who will be reaching Parliament. On the Labour side, we have Navindu Mishra, Tanmanjeet Singh Desi, then we have Lisa Nandi, Seema Malhotra, Valerie Vaz, Preet Kaur Gill. Then there is somebody from Wales. The very first Indian origin MP from Wales has also will also take office, Kanishk Narayan. So a huge influx of Indian origin MPs. On the Conservatives, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, two of the most prominent faces, will continue to be in Parliament. Sailesh Wara, unfortunately, has lost the election this time, so he will be not there. But Claire Coutinho, again, who was a junior minister, someone who was very close to Rishi Sunak, has won the election. Amit Jogia from Hendon also tried his luck from the Conservative Party, but he has been unsuccessful. So it's been a mixed bag, but by and large, you will see a large influx of Indian origin MPs, Indian origin politicians who will take their space in the Palace of Westminster. So yes, of course, it is all very fresh, but huge presence of Indian origin MPs to continue in Palace of Westminster, Shreya.
Absolutely. Danish, one last question before we let you go. You know, just the fact that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party have been given this landslide mandate, this historic mandate after several years, reflects the fact that the people were wanting change. They were looking for change. The kind of sentiment that prevails today in UK, is there a lot of optimism? Is there a lot of hope from the Keir Starmer-led new government now to stabilize the economy, to have the NHS being sorted for the common citizens, as well as overcoming other challenges?
There are huge expectations. With huge mandate comes huge expectations. And it has to be some key announcements, big steps that this Labour government has to take to match the expectations of the people. NHS waiting times are at record high. People have problems accessing the services of the general practitioners in every nook and part of the United Kingdom. Of course, NHS is free here, so it is a great boon. Unlike US and other mature democracies, the health sector here is at the point of delivery, but there are huge bottlenecks. People face a lot of struggle to get those appointments. So that is one of the key internal things that Keir Starmer has to address. And also, of course, immigration, because there has been a huge influx of illegal immigrants coming to the country. As far as the British right press is concerned, they have been highlighting this concern. So all those issues will be very difficult and challenging, but people have huge expectations, and it remains to be seen what Keir Starmer does to tackle these problems of NHS, the economy, and migration. So all eyes on the new government, and let's see what Keir Starmer does over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Danish, thanks very much. It's been an exciting 2 days for you, and the entire campaign and the result day. All of this has been interesting for you as well as here in India. We've been looking out for these historic results. Thanks very much, Danish, for joining us on Nation Tonight and getting us the latest from UK. Let me now go across to my guests on the show, Nicholas and Chirayu. Nicholas, let me come to you first. We were talking about this day before yesterday as to what we can expect in these elections, and as expected and as exit polls predicted, it has been a landslide victory for the Labour Party and Keir Starmer. But help us understand, Nicholas, what has worked for Keir Starmer?
Well, it's difficult to say what has worked. He's because his success is partly because of disenchantment with the ruling Conservative Party, the previously ruling Conservative Party, I should call them. But as Danish summed up very nicely, the expectation is very high, because it's one thing to be changing a party in power, in this case after 14 years, but for the new party to have such a massive majority is quite unusual, and it really does raise the expectations. I think Danish said it well, with high numbers of a high majority, then come high expectations. And he has to fulfill those expectations. What has worked for him? Well, you could say he's reformed the Labour Party quite successfully from the party that 5 years ago did very badly in the elections. This is to do with it was under Corbyn's leadership, and it really wasn't electable. That was the conclusion of the public at large. Now we're seeing that Keir Starmer's Labour Party is highly electable by the election figures. The fact that he's got roughly 2/3 of the seats in the lower house of Parliament shows that he has a mandate. It's not just a marginal victory, it's a very successful victory. So that's what's worked for him. You could say he's got a very good team around him. He has, of course, tried out various people in the shadow position. That's what we call it when they're waiting to take over. And he's moved very fast to put the key members of that shadow cabinet into position, as again Danish was pointing out. So they're in place. Okay. We weren't without a government for very long at all. We have a government already. Of course, more appointments will be made. So expectations are high. Yeah. The mood, the atmosphere is good, and we shall see what happens.
Okay, Chirayu, those were the expectations from the British citizens. Here in India, what should we expect now? The new party, the new Labour Party now forming the government in UK. How does this impact the India-UK relationship? And what are some of the things that India should be placing right ahead on day one? Its concerns, the challenges in the bilateral relationship?
Was that for me, Shreya?
Yes, Chirayu, please.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for having me. I think from New Delhi's perspective, what is a sigh of relief is that the current dispensation that has just ushered in would not be led by someone like a Jeremy Corbyn. So that's a great news for starters. And I think once the government settles down, usually new governments, they are divided between foreign policy agenda and domestic agenda. But in this case, I think clearly the domestic agenda would take precedence. So that is one thing. But as soon as Keir Starmer and his team, they are ready for business internationally, and then they turn to Asia. India should be ready with its own agenda. Even before they have taken charge, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, he has made clear that India-UK free trade agreement is very important for them and they are going to work on them. So even before we present the agenda, the incoming government knows what they have to do and what they need to do. Of course, it is not purely about economics and numbers. There are political issues involved. For example, India's concerns regarding the Khalistani elements, India's concerns regarding economic fugitives who have taken refuge in UK. All these issues are intertwined with pure numbers and economic issues. Apart from that, mobility of Indian students, visa issues, they are also interlinked with this India-UK free trade agreement. So that is a priority that will help place things in order, and I think there should be some momentum on that front as soon as the new government is ready, and that is what New Delhi should be looking for.
Nicholas, I have some numbers here, and this is regarding UK's national debt, which is about £2.7 trillion, which is higher than at any point since the 1960s. The GDP per capita grew just 4.3% between 2007 and 2023. And in the previous 16 years, that figure was at 46%. So clearly, a lot that needs to be done when it comes to stabilizing the economy and seeing economic growth in the country. What are the first few steps that Keir Starmer and his government should be taking to just, have that stabilization in the economy?
Well, I think moving fast to bring the new government in is the best move towards stability. But you're quoting some figures about the state of the economy. I mean, we all know that growth is very poor. It's nothing like India's 8% plus GDP growth. So that's clearly a priority. And this government has already said, before it came in, it already said that growth, getting the economy moving, is an absolute priority. You may be aware that during the campaign, the Conservatives were accusing the Labour Party of wanting to put taxes up, raise taxes, and they were denying it. So in other words, they've come into government with a very tight budget. They have promised they're not going to raise the regular taxes that affect most people, like income tax, which are already very high. So they've got to try to tackle all these things, get growth moving, tackle the health service issue, tackle the illegal immigration system without any additional revenue coming in. That's how it looks to us, unless they're going to move funds from one outlet to another. So we're all waiting to see exactly what happens. But I think I would add that one of the new ministers is Rachel Reeves, who has a background having worked for the Bank of England. And I think she's inspired a lot of confidence in the Labour Party. Arguably, she is one of the key plus points. You know, you asked me earlier, what has Labour done to get it right? Well, I think Rachel Reeves herself is a key reason why the nation have put the trust in her. And they go around with the slogan about all proposals are fully funded. In other words, they're not coming up with pledges that they don't know how to fund. It still leaves the problem of how they are going to fund things if they're not going to raise taxes. And Rachel Reeves has said that the first budget will not be till September. So that gives them a chance to try to work things out. So, but you're right, it's all about the economy. And we are waiting to see what the move is on the economy.
Chirayu, any election that happens at this moment in any part of the world will be overshadowed by the two wars that have been happening, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the Israel-Hamas war. UK election was no stranger to that. How do you see Keir Starmer and the Labour Party really navigating their way through these two wars and the ripple effects that have happened across the world because of them?
So far as the present Labour government is concerned, that tune on Ukraine was not very different from the Conservatives. So that way, there will be some continuity or most continuity so far as the Russia-Ukraine war will be concerned. There is a general tendency that we are seeing in entire transatlantic alliance regarding some sort of war weariness. The funds that they have to continuously transfer and its impact on domestic economy. So those impacts or those challenges, those debates would be uniform across the Western world. So that is one thing regarding Russia-Ukraine war is concerned. The second thing that we would on this Israel-Hamas issue, the entire Middle East question, I think there Keir Starmer would have to navigate quite a tightrope because what exactly with Tories, the thing was very clear that they were pro-Israel. There were no Hamas sympathizers that were a part of the party, so on and so forth. But when it comes to Labour, what we are seeing is that there is a center wing of the party which now dominates, and then there is a radical or left-leaning wing of the party which has taken positions that are very similar to what progressive Democrats take in the US. And so far as the current election that has recently concluded, Keir Starmer has not given a megaphone to those elements within his party. Now, moving ahead, he will not only have to handle them, but he'll also have to humor that base. Now, how does he balance between the center and the radical wing of his party? That is something we'll have to see. But there might be some balancing act there.
We'll have to see
but again,
that.
the positions will not dramatically change.
Okay. Okay, quickly, my last question to you, Nicholas, before I wrap up. Interestingly, most of the Europe has turned towards the far right, but the UK has moved towards the left now. That's an interesting dynamic that's playing out in that part of the world. But the likes of Nigel Farage now sitting in the parliament, is there any sort of concern there? A far right party winning the seats, having that say in the parliament? Would that be some sort of pressure on the Labour?
Well, not really pressure. It's a factor and it needs to be taken into account. But I think the Reform Party led by Nigel Farage has done more damage to the Conservative Party than anything. It's part of the reason why the Conservative number of votes fell so rapidly was because of the challenge from the right. But it hasn't affected the Labour Party visibly. As you rightly say, we're in the category of having shifted to the left. The right is there, and I would think that has a more serious effect on the ability of the Conservative Party to maintain some sort of unity. After all, one of the reasons it did so badly in this election was disunity, battles going on within the party between the various wings. And you could say that the Reform Party was like defections from the Conservative Party. It looked a little like that. But anyway, they only got 4 seats in Parliament, which is pretty insignificant in the overall picture of things. And you're right, Britain's gone to the left, whereas France looks like going to the right.
Yeah. All right, we'll have to see how that really moves forward. But Nicholas, you'd agree with me that 10 Downing Street's residents might keep changing, but the one permanent residence who stays there is Larry the cat, and that is not going to change, hopefully, anytime soon. But both of you gentlemen, thank you very much, Nicholas and Shreya, for joining us on Nation Tonight and sharing your perspective on this big historic UK election result. Thank you very much. All right,